What's up, everybody? I am Charlie Marlow. That is the great Brendan Schaefer. This is low hanging fruit. We took a week off for spring break, but we're back. It's the week of baseball season officially starting. Brendan, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing good. I got nautical for spring break. I mean, just went totally crazy like the college kids do. No, I didn't know it was spring break. I just thought you were being lazy.
Oh no, for my kids though. I mean, it's not
Oh,
for
for your
me
kids. Got
anymore.
it, got it, got it. Okay.
Look, if my kids are not in school, then I can't do anything, basically. All
Right.
right. I can't do anything, even this podcast. Nothing gets done. All right. Let's get right to it. We got about 30, 35 minutes hardcore here for this episode. We're going to call it our season preview. Now, first of all, as we're recording, it's 9:27 Central Time. Dylan Carlson, we should get some news here shortly, Brendan. I think it's fair to say he's probably not going to be there opening day. Is that fair to say?
That's my read anyway. And like, hopefully it's nothing super severe that keeps him out for months and months. But I would be surprised if, what is it? He had the injury on a Monday and then 3 days later on a Thursday. It's fine. Like, it's a shoulder something. We don't really know the severity as we're recording now. Hopefully the update comes here soon. But it doesn't seem like he's going to be ready for the opening day roster if I just had to speculate, right? Based on what we saw, what we heard, it didn't look great. It probably could have been worse, honestly. Anytime you have an outfield collision, it can be pretty dangerous, especially with a guy Jordan Walker's size barreling at you. But yeah, I would be surprised if Carlson is going to be available for Thursday in Los Angeles.
So we should know more on Dylan Carlson. I want this to be more about kind of our season preview. We can give all of our hot takes and then we can go back months from now and see how wrong we were. Let's just start big picture. I was going through a lot of the MLB.com projections and whatnot. I think it's kind of fun to look at that and break it down by bullpen, rotation, offense, whatever it is. But let's just start big picture. Basically, Baseball Prospectus, MLB.com, tweeted this out. They have the Cardinals winning the Central with a record of 84 and 78, which I think is right where we all kind of think with the Pacoda 85, 84, 85 seems about right to me. What do you think?
It seems like where everybody's marking their median. I think the sports books are around 84 and a half if you were to play the over under game. Right now, I'm going through my polls on Twitter where I'm asking Cardinals fans over under, and it seems like we might only get to kind of the low 80s before the majority flips over to saying under that win total. Yeah, I mean, Charlie, I think it's fair to say 84, 85. Is it a little optimistic, maybe even? I hate to be the pessimist of the show, but it feels like there are things going wrong this spring. And if we want to gloss over all of them and say, yeah, it'll be fine, you lose three outfielders, you've got depth. Sure, your starting pitching hasn't been that great this spring, and the new guys you brought in, the one guy you thought would be real good hasn't pitched because he's injured, and it's going to start the year on the IL, which could maybe just be a short term thing for Sonny Gray. But like, are there enough kind of warning signs here that we should maybe not be so comfortable to pencil him in for 84, 85?
Yeah, it's funny. You said, I hate to be the pessimist. I'm going to be the pessimist on this podcast. Okay.
Typically so, yeah.
So here's the deal. And I've said this a million times. You have to look at the team the way it's comprised right now. We all know if the Cardinals are in it, they'll look different trade deadline. To me, that's where if anybody thinks this team is pushing 90 wins, I don't know how they could say that based on the way this team is comprised right now. Okay? Now it's different. If they add at the deadline, I'll change my mind on that. But I agree with you. I feel like 84, 85 to me feels like the top end of what the Cardinals could do right now with this particular roster. So I'm interested to see how your poll results end up. I do think a lot of Cardinals fans are even more pessimistic this year, which is why, from a betting standpoint, I'd probably go the opposite, to be honest with you. But
Interesting.
I totally get why a lot of Cardinals fans look at this more as an 80 win team. And that's where I'll just reiterate. I would be shocked if this team didn't add at the deadline and somehow got close to 90 wins. I would be shocked by that. Now, can they get to 84, 85 as comprised? That wouldn't shock me. this does not strike me as, and 90 wins isn't even elite, but with the starting pitching probably going to be average with all the injuries, I just don't see this as a 90 win team at all.
I don't see the path to that as constructed either. Like, I guess if you were trying to build that out, you would say, look, if you went around the horn and looked at full health, everybody in your lineup, I think you're basically average to above average at every position. And maybe some of those above averages turn back into MVP candidates like an Arenado, like a Goldie. Maybe offensively, a Nolan Gorman takes that type of step, or even a Jordan Walker. But like, what if they don't, right? What if they're more around a median projection or perhaps even a little below for some names? Then that offense is not top five. It's maybe more like top 10, top 12, which is still solid. But this is also an offense that at times has just kind of disappeared for days in a period of time. And you go, well, the consistency of the offense, like it's not a thing you can blame on Jeff Albert anymore. That was kind of the popular thing when he was the hitting coach. But we have seen, in recent years, the Cardinals still have those issues of consistency day to day, putting up runs. And they've kind of built a pitching staff where they say, look, we don't need to maybe score 8, 9 runs to win these games, but probably most days you're going to have to get to five. If your starter's giving up 3 or 4 and the bullpen's holding it there, it's a nice strategy, but you're still going to have to put those runs up consistently. So if that's the version of the offense that you get, and then you try to squint and see the rotation as a top unit, I guess you could. I mean, Sonny Gray could get healthy and repeat. Maybe Lance Lynn reverts back to pre 2023 numbers. But I mean, Kyle Gibson kind of feels like he's going to be where he is. Maybe a bounce back for Michaelis and Steven Matz's health could happen. But I think you're asking a lot to say, oh, yeah, all these things are going to come to fruition, and the bullpen's going to be great, and the defense is going to be flawless. That's how you get to 90. Like, it feels like a lot to ask.
All right, let's break it down by groups, kind of like football here. We'll start with offense lineup. And again, I'm just playing around with the MLB stuff because I think it's fun. So, no National League Central teams, by the way, were projected in the top 10 of lineups for baseball. Both the Reds and the Cardinals were honorable mention. Now, you, and I don't remember exactly how you said it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said if the Cardinals could sneak into that top 5 offensively. I don't personally think that's going to be the case, but I do think top 10 or whatever, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever that is. I think that's very doable. I look at that lineup and I like it. However, and look, I don't try to go crazy over spring stats, but are you worried about Paul Goldschmidt right now? I mean, look, it's spring, but hitting about a buck, OBP and slug about $2, 20 strikeouts in 46 at bats. Didn't have a great season last year, but his batted ball numbers were better. He is getting older. I don't know. I could watch Paul Goldschmidt this spring and kind of be like, "Ugh." I mean, if Paul Goldschmidt is not at least close to the typical Paul Goldschmidt, I think it's going to be hard for this offense to even be top 10. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I mean, for as much as we say, kind of take spring stats with a grain of salt, you do look at them, I feel like, a little bit, especially when it pertains to a guy like Goldschmidt who had, a little bit less in terms of productivity last year than you expect. And you could say, well, it's is it part of the aging decline, or is it just a one-off? And like, history would tell you it is probably part of an aging decline. But we look at Paul Goldschmidt and say, well, he's in such great shape. He's so dedicated. Like, he can get over that for a couple of years and kind of defy father time. Yeah, maybe he can, but he hasn't looked like he's going to this spring. And I think we kind of take for granted that he's just going to be plugged right into the middle of your lineup and give you that, 850 OPS or whatever that he usually offers. And maybe he doesn't. Like, Arenado's another guy, sub 700 OPS this spring, which again, don't go crazy over, but he had a stark decline late in the year last year that dropped his overall numbers to below an 800 OPS for the first time in a long time. So if those two guys, and we're just like mentally sort of cashing them in as being all-star caliber hitters again, and they aren't, then yeah, you have more questions than you thought you did. And that's before we even start talking about basically an entire outfield worth of players being injured. So there are some concerns, I think. Now, we could get to the first week and Goldschmidt could be mashing and we go, okay, it's fine. He was doing whatever he was doing in spring and that's irrelevant now. And hopefully that's the case. But like, I still think it's worth talking about a little bit if we're doing a season preview to say, hey, in our minds, when I say top 10 offense, I'm counting on those guys being themselves. And when I had said top 5 previously, I think my take was I don't know that they're top 5. I don't think they are, but I think they almost need to be with the way their
Mhm.
pitching is constructed to be as competitive in not only the Central, but like win the Central, then get into the playoffs and do something when you get in there. That might call for a top 5 offense with the way the pitching staff is constructed.
I hear you. And when we look at the stats, which again, I just throw out there for fun, I don't think anybody thinks Paul Goldschmidt's going to bat 109 for the season. But on the other side, you can focus too much on the bad, you can focus too much on the good. I do think it's funny when the Cardinals released their lineup the other day that was kind of projected as the opening day lineup and Matt Carpenter was sitting right there. And we all said, "Oh, Matt Carpenter, he's not going to take a spot from somebody else and he's not going to get to hit too much." Now, obviously there's been a million injuries, so that changes the complexion of the opening day lineup and roster. But slash line 333, hitting 14 OBP, over 600 slug. I mean, Matt Carpenter right now is going to get a chance, and I just think it's fun because we all basically said this dude is just a essentially a coach. It'd be pretty funny if Matt Carpenter's good again.
It'd be funny. It'd be really nice. Like they could certainly use his bat being sort of a throwback to what it had been in the years where he was an MVP candidate. How likely that is to be sustained, I guess we'll see. But it is interesting that he was in that lineup. I would have thought like home opener, you probably put him in there for sure if you're facing a righty. But opening day, like Alec Burleson has also had a nice spring, and he would maybe be the other lefty bat that would slide into that number 6 spot in the lineup. So I guess we'll see. But if he's raking and doesn't have to play the field because he's never really been a plus fielder, fine. Like the Cardinals are going to need kind of all hands on deck. So I don't know if I terribly mind it. I do think probably Burleson might be still the better option in the long run, but Carpenter could defy the odds, and that would be okay with everybody. I think.
Yeah, what do you think just big picture injuries before we'll get to starting rotation and bullpen. And I know some of the injuries were basically baked into some of these projections, like Tommy Edman. I think the baseball world knew Tommy Edman was not going to be ready for opening day. But you just look at I'm talking about incrementally getting picked off here and there when you're looking at now maybe Carlson and you have Tommy Edman out for a while. Lars Nootbaar, maybe not a long time. Keenan Middleton, we'll see. You got to think Sonny Gray's missing what 2 to 3 starts, whatever it is. And I don't know. I worry about just the little nicks and the injuries here, just picking off at that win total, and also a team that doesn't have a great margin for error. And I'm repeating myself, but man, I just feel like this team could really benefit from a strong start. And you have what, 5 injuries basically. You have 5 injuries right now to your opening day roster, and you have a really difficult schedule. That is not a good recipe for a good start.
Yeah, and these injuries have happened before the regular season has even begun. I mean, last year, the first week, Lars Nootbaar banged his thumb, slide into a base, and he was out for weeks and weeks. Like injuries don't just stop because the season starts. You have to hope that at that point it doesn't get any worse. I do think we'll see Nootbaar pretty soon. I am still skeptical on Tommy Edman until I hear he's full go. I assume he's a ghost. Like to this point, it's just been brutal the recovery process and having to start and stop and start and stop. So he's kind of out of my mind in terms of somebody that can help you right away. With Carlson's injury, depending on the severity there, you could really hope to use Edmund back even sooner than you had hoped previously, because Carlson was starting to pick it up and was finally doing some things against right-handed pitching. But if his shoulder thing has him out, then that's another spot that you're down. I mean, I'm not terribly worried about Gray, but again, you could really use him because the rest of that rotation is definitely suspect. Bullpen, I guess Keenan Middleton is the main injury. I know Drew Rom is out to begin the year, but I don't think he was destined for this roster to begin with. So I think it is kind of outside of just the outfielders, man. That's really where it's like you'd love to get one or two of those guys back because it is important to start fast. And it's nothing against Michael Ciani or any of the other guys that would fill in, but like you want to be able to put your best foot forward for these first few weeks in the grueling schedule that you have.
Okay, let's go to pitching and let's go to starting rotation. And again, we're just having fun with the MLB rankings, which by the way, they power ranked the Cardinals 18th, which I thought was a little low. I thought maybe they come in middle of the pack. I thought 18th was kind of low, but this is just that's the whole team, by the way.
Who
So
tweeted this, by the way? I haven't seen this. These
this
power
was an
rankings.
MLB.com article.
Okay.
Before this show here, I went through. I looked at a bunch of their lists. This is like
That's
a
called
Martin Kilcoin
research, I
thing.
guess,
No, I'm a list guy. Don't you think lists are fun to talk about, right?
especially this time of year. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We have nothing else to go on but these stupid lists, but they're fun and they provide us content. So I thank MLB.com for that. So I find it funny though when I go through all these lists and there's like no central teams in the top 10 of any of these. So
Yeah.
look, we know this is up for grabs. So starting rotation again, no National League Central teams in the top 10. I I don't think there's any chance the rotation is going to be elite. I don't know if there's a great chance this rotation will even be good. I think if they are middle of the pack, I mean, can you see this starting rotation being better than middle of the pack? And I guess if you say, okay, 14th or whatever, I mean, I'm talking about creeping towards the upper third of baseball. I don't see that happening. I see them falling somewhere in the teens for a starting rotation. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that you can get beyond middle of the pack without really like again, you could paint the best case scenario. Gray's back quick and he's himself. Lance Lynn, he was terrible last year, but if you look prior to last year, Lance Lynn had a lot of good years that he strung together in a row. And so maybe he's a 3.9 ERA and you're like, "Oh, that's like a number 2." Miles Michaelis maybe reverts back to being an all-star kind of pitcher, 3.5 ERA. Like suddenly you've got a 1 through 3 that you feel really good about. And we'll see from the other spots. Like I kind of feel like Gibson's your number 5. Maybe a guy like Thompson emerges and kind of forces the issue where you want to keep giving him opportunities. Remains to be seen. Steven Matz is kind of a question on health, but I don't really see it. I don't see I would probably say 18th is somewhat fair. I think you have room to kind of get to
Hold on.
13th, 14th, but
Sorry. 18th was the whole team, just so you know. That was
oh,
the
okay.
power rankings of the team.
Yeah, I tried to find the list and I couldn't find it. So I'm just going to give
Well,
up on that.
no, I just what I was saying is they only did top 10. So this is in terms of rotation. I know I'm confusing everyone, but the
Yeah.
Cardinals and no teams in the Central were in the top 10 in
So they
starting
didn't tell you
rotation.
where the rotation landed, just the team in
Correct.
general is 18th. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if they're saying the team overall is 18th, that might say their view of the rotation is like bottom 10 for sure, right? Because we think the offense is pretty decent at worst. So yeah, I would say, man, about at its best, 13th, 14th. But if I had to put it on a median, I would say probably 18th to 20th. And maybe I'm wrong, and I'd love to be wrong because you want to root for Kyle Gibson. He's a good dude. He's Gibby, right? But you look at his spring stats and well, callback. Look at his spring stats; it hasn't gone well so far. And maybe he's just such a veteran that stuff doesn't matter. And he gets into the regular season and he's right back to a 4.5 ERA. But until we see that and kind of that stabilization at the bottom of the rotation, you do kind of worry about that spot just a little bit. And Steven Matz hopefully could be full health, but he's kind of been brought along slowly this spring to where I don't feel like we have a great handle on where he's going to be opening day. And if you think back to last year, his numbers finished pretty good. I think his ERA was below 4. His ERA was like 6 the first time he was in the rotation, to the extent that they had to pull him from the rotation and put him in the bullpen for a while, not because of injury, but because of performance. So you can't have that version of Matz and a questionable version of Gibson and not really knowing yet what you get from Lynn. Like that makes it difficult to say, yeah, this will be a top 10 rotation. I find it hard to kind of carve out the path there. Hope I'm wrong. Could it be 12th, 13th if everything breaks right? Sure. But that's you're asking 5 spots to cooperate at that point.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to our earlier conversation about what is the top end of the Cardinals right now as comprised win total. We both said 84, 85. I think the top end of the rotation, if everything fell into place, which it already hasn't, by the way. I mean, I think the best case scenario is probably, like you said, maybe 12th or 13th. And that's with everything going great, but it's probably more middle of the pack. And it wouldn't take too much fall off to drop into the 20s. And let's just look at a couple numbers again. It doesn't really matter, but I think it's interesting to discuss. So spring ERAs. We'll start with the good. Michaelis 2.14, Zach Thompson 2.81. The bad, Lance Lynn is pushing 8, Kyle Gibson is pushing 11, and Steven Matz is over 8. So again, I don't know what it means. I do feel like this kind of gets back to the fantasy baseball thing where I joke that every time I think of Kyle Gibson, I do think of him giving up 4 consecutive home runs to the
Darn it.
Cardinals.
Yeah,
I just feel like Kyle Gibson is so hittable at times. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he has to be on. He has to have a good defense. I
that's
just
it.
feel like this could be a fun team though, because again, I think there's gonna be a lot of 6-5 wins, hopefully, for the Cardinals. These aren't these aren't elite starters that are gonna strike out a ton of dudes. There'll be some strikeouts. You got some good strikeout numbers, Gray and Lynn, and if Gibson can get up there. But I think there's
No,
gonna be a lot of okay, but I'm saying
Gibson
a lot
can't.
of
I mean,
balls
if
in
you look at
play.
his numbers, man, he just won't be.
Okay, I'm saying, but he and Michaelis are kind of similar. Not
Yes.
terrible, but what are we talking? Probably 3/4 of a strikeout per innings pitch, something like that.
I
Isn't that
I
about it?
wanna say Gibson's, like, in the 6s per 9 and Michaelis is
Okay.
around 7, which, like,
Okay.
in fairness, you say that's not terrible. I think it's basically bottom of the league last year for both those guys. And, like, I don't know, what do you consider terrible? Like, 1 per 1 would be good, right? 9 per 9 we're cool with.
Right.
I feel like anything below that, and they're not really a strikeout guy. These guys are more like 6, 7 strikeouts per 9, which is what it is. They're gonna have to rely on their defense, which could be okay if they prioritize defense and, keep guys in the right spots.
Hold on.
What you got?
It is a little better, and I don't have a good memory. But for Gibson last year, his Ks per nine was 7.4. His career is 7.2. He
Okay.
had 157 Ks in 192 innings. So that's like I said, like it's like 3/4 of a strikeout per innings pitch. I thought Michaelis was the same. I'll look that up right now. But go ahead.
He's down there. I mean, yeah, they're both going to rely on their defense. I think Lynn can strike out a dude per inning. That's probably
Yeah.
something he's capable of doing. Hopefully, Sonny Gray even higher than that. Hopefully, Zach Thompson hones his stuff and can be a guy that misses a bunch of bats as well. And like Steven Matz can do that as well. It's just so hard to put a grade on Steven Matz because we haven't seen enough of him consistently. Like, stay healthy and then have a full year, and we'll see.
And you're right. No, I'm just I want to give the stats here. You're
It's
right on
it's good.
Miles Michaelis. He was in 201 and a third, 137. So he's closer to 6. He was
Okay,
6.1. He's 6.6 for his career. So
I had him
Gibson is a little
switched.
better. There you go.
Yeah, I had them 2 switched in my head, that's all.
No, go ahead. Hey, I'm trying to provide just the stats for people.
That's good. No, that's what I wanted. I was trying to look them up myself, but you were quicker, that's all. No, I just had them switched in my head. To me, that's like, you don't strike out many people. Like, I think I looked this up, at the end of the year, like, bottom 3 of the bottom 5 in baseball that pitched at least 100 innings were Adam Wainwright, Dakota Hudson, and Miles Michaelis in Ks per 9. So, like, you wonder how they struggled last year. So the Cardinals Wayno's going to go sing, and Dakota's going to go pitch for another team. And well, you see what you can do there. Like Lance Lynn, I think is going to be important. Can he replacing one of those slots in your rotation be a strikeout guy who also doesn't have a sort of inflated ERA? He struck out guys last year. Lance Lynn did. It's just he gave up a lot of home runs. I think Busch Stadium is going to help that. I generally think Lance Lynn's going to be pretty good. But you talk about like the defense mattering. You just watch spring games. Lance Lynn gives up contact at times as well. He throws a bunch of fastballs, and they're going to put some balls in play. We know Michaelis is going to allow balls in play. Gibson obviously is going to allow balls in play too. So like that's 60% of your rotation that I do feel like the defense has got to be ready to back you up. And that's kind of why I was on board with Tommy Edman center fielder, because I thought good range can help these contact oriented pitchers have good years. Now there's no Edman. We'll see when he gets back. Dylan Carlson was going to be a decent center field option. Now we'll have to wait and see on him. I'm hoping that the defense can kind of stabilize. I think Mason Wynn at short, that's going to be good. But defense will matter for this rotation. That's kind of been my drumbeat all off season.
Hold on. Hold on. That's my new thing here. I
I
have
like it.
really
Long
long,
finger. Look at
like a
that.
witch's finger or something, like I'm a
It
goblin.
takes up the whole
Okay,
frame.
I know. All right. And no one cares about this. The reason I do that is I think when people are on a Zoom or a StreamYard, I don't think it's good to talk over each other. If you and I were in the same room,
Oh
we can
yeah, we would be
interrupt
able to
each other.
see, and
That's
body
the only
language
reason
would
I do
help.
that,
Yeah,
just so you know. So I'll
I
go like
like it.
this. stuff like that. Okay,
I'd rather
let's
you
be
point.
positive
It's
now.
better.
My long weird finger. Okay,
It's good.
let's be positive now. And it's
Can
not
we?
just because MLB thinks that the Cardinals may have the seventh best bullpen. I think a lot of people were high on this bullpen with the way it's been constructed, and it is that Heim Bloom way of constructing a bullpen.
Careful.
You just take 10 names and you throw them against the wall, and there's a very good chance that 5 of them are going to stick, and you take some young guys and you take guys with different roles and you take some rule 5 guys and you take a bunch of guys with options that you can just ride that Memphis train up and down. And look, at the top end, if Ryan Helsley's healthy, we know he's really, really good. Riley O'Brien has been dang impressive. I'm just trying to go through some of the numbers here. I know Jojo Romero hasn't had a great spring. Andre Palante's been good. I just think there's a lot of options. Gio Gallegos has been good. If he even comes back to being that really dependable second best arm, and maybe he doesn't need to be. Maybe Kittredge could be that. Who knows when
Yeah.
Ian Middleton comes back? I just like that there's a lot of names that I could potentially trust.
Yeah, and like O'Brien's interesting because he's probably, third or fourth or maybe even further down that depth chart of right-handers behind Helsley, Gallegos, Kittredge. And then Middleton when he gets back. I think Middleton being out maybe secures a spot for Palante because otherwise he was maybe kind of on that line where you go, well, what's his role? I actually think Palante very valuable to have. I know some Cardinals fans got frustrated with him last year, but if you look at his outings, he would deliver that ground ball they were asking him to deliver damn near every time and it would just find a hole. I don't think the Cardinal defense on the infield was as good last year as it had been in previous seasons. Hopefully, Mason Wynn, a full season of him at shortstop, can kind of help that. I think Gorman has improved defensively at second. So I still feel like that's a valuable, I call him like a utility knife out of the bullpen where he can just get you a double play ball and almost have that be his role. And then if you're in one of those mop up situations, Palante can also just go out and eat it for 3 innings if that's what you need from somebody. So I kind of like him being in that bullpen too. And then from the left side, like you mentioned Romero struggling a little bit, and I feel like they envisioned him being their top lefty dude when you needed somebody in the eighth or even the ninth to face a lineup comprised of lefties in that spot. You can trust Romero. And maybe they'll still give him the chance to do that at first. Look out for Matthew Liberatore, though, because he's made this team. He's been told he's on the roster. And we saw at the end of last year, he looked like a confident, different version of himself when pitching in relief. And it would not surprise me to see by June or July, we view Matthew Liberatore sort of like that Andrew Miller lefty reliever, not like him performing like Hall of Fame level like Andrew Miller did for years before the Cardinals. But like to be that guy for this team, I think is possible for Libby. And that might allow people to maybe look at that Arozarena trade a little different. I know that one is one that a lot of Cardinals fans don't love. Libby hasn't panned out as a starter, but maybe if the Cardinals just like accept that they could maybe find a better role for him, this could be the year where he could take off as a reliever and be a legitimate weapon for the team.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes left. Let's start with win total. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm going to say 83 wins. What does Brendan Schaefer say?
I was going to say 82. And I
Okay.
and I think if they're at 500 at the deadline, your thought process on they'll add so maybe it becomes 84, 85, 86 is certainly in play. But I'm a little gun shy right now. I got to be honest. And I didn't think a month ago I'd be in this spot, but there's just been enough where it was like if you had a perfect spring or a close to perfect spring, maybe a reliever goes down and you go, okay, you'll get him back in a month, but you don't have all these other injuries. I'm not saying I'm panicking by going 82, but I would have been 85, 86, and I would have been pretty comfortable. Like, yeah, they'll figure it out. But there's just been enough. And again, you don't want to overreact to spring, but there's been enough for me to go, hey, let's remember, like they did win only 71 games last year. And I've been able to talk about why they can maybe close that gap without a bunch of external changes. And they've made some external changes that should be helpful. But there's just been enough for me to go, I think they're about a little bit above 500, but maybe 82, 83 is enough to win the Central, Charlie. But for me right now, it's like it could go the other way. Like, let's say the first week of the season is traumatizing and more guys get hurt and they can't beat the Dodgers. And like, I'm not predicting it's going to go that way. I think they'll hold their own. But I don't know. For me right now, it's like that. I would set that over under personally at 82 and a half. And if you made me, I'd go, under by a half. I'll go 82, 80.
See, I'm with you in the sense I was actually higher on the Cardinals basically this winter because I don't think the Cardinals were as bad as the 71 wins suggests. I think
Yeah.
Wayno was thrown out there for ceremonial reasons, and they didn't try the second 2 months of the season. So I don't think the jump from 71 to 85 is as big as a lot of people think. But as you said, not only has this not been a good spring, you could make the case it's been an awful spring with Sonny Gray being hurt, the one guy that can't get hurt, a million outfield injuries, and they're just stacking up. We haven't played a game, and Nootbaar and Edmund, and now Carlson. We'll see what happens. Keenan Middleton. So, okay, got a couple more minutes here. I do have a hard out. You mentioned this, and I'm curious. There's my finger again.
All right.
Let's.
That's
I'll
when
give
you're
you.
going to speak. Yeah.
I'll give you two questions. First, and we're going to do a show, by the way, folks, on Friday to kind of break down the first game. But give me what's the Cardinals' record after the Dodgers series? I'm gonna say 1-3.
It's probably 1-3, but can I be optimistic and say 2-2?
Yes,
Like they
of course.
can this lineup is going to be about the lineup because the pitching is going to give up some runs. The Dodgers are going to score on you a little bit. That's just going to happen. But like Cardinal lineup needs to kind of assert itself, I think, in this opening series. I know they're not going to be at full strength, but there's a lot of dudes in this lineup. On paper, I really like this lineup. But if we get a few weeks into the season and everybody's underperforming, the lineup doesn't look as good. I'm going to say 2-2 with the full acknowledgement that I might be wrong and you might be right.
Well, and look, it doesn't really matter. It's fun. And my last question on the schedule is we've all discussed this brutal start before, of course, the great Oakland A's, which they play on tax day, April 15th. But before that, you have 16 games. Four versus the Dodgers, three versus the Padres, three versus the Marlins, three versus the Phillies, three versus the Arizona Diamondbacks. You would think all those teams are going to be in the playoff hunt. What do you think the Cardinals' record is through the first 16? I just did it in my head real quick. I'm going to say 6-10.
I was going to say 7-9. So I think that about tracks with where we are on the opening series. You can find a difference there. 7-9, which I think would be fine, by the way. 6-10, I think you start to worry a little bit. Not that that's going to like that one game difference, but 7-9, you feel you're right around 500. You're just a touch below. If you're 6-10, there's a quicker path to the wheels falling off. Um, 7-9, I think is my prediction, and honestly, I would take that as a car. If you're a Cardinal fan, I'm like, look, it's not ideal. You want to be 500, I think. If you can be, that'd be good. But if you're 7-9, you're in the mix, and that's going to sound disgusting, but I think like that's when you're grounded in reality on what this schedule could bring. Now watch them go 12-4 and just make us look dumb. Who knows?
Sure. But also, even if you're 6-10, 7-9, and then let's just assume they win the series versus the A's, or if things get crazy and you sweep the A's. But 7-9, and then a 2-1 series win over the A's. I'm bad at math. All of a sudden,
You're
you're
nine
what?
and ten.
You're
Yeah,
9-10, and you're good to go. You're like, we got through the gauntlet. Hopefully, we're healthier now. Let's play some baseball. What do you think?
I think that would be a strategy they would take. They would never say it out loud, but they would privately probably say 9-10. After that, we would be okay.
All right. And this show is okay. Sometimes it's better than okay.
Is
We have
decent.
a hard out. Yes, I did a lot
A
of the
hard out. Do you need a
finger.
half an hour to prepare for the next show? What is this? A hard out.
Well, I like to give them the link very early.
Oh,
They
okay.
want the link early to set up. We're interviewing over on the Kenny Wallace Show Ben Kennedy, who basically runs NASCAR. That'll be out later today on Tuesday if people want to check that out. I got to go. Brendan, great job. And we will do a longer show on Friday, breaking down the first game of the season.
And I have a YouTube channel. Go find it.
Be Shafe Daily on YouTube and his fantasy football channel. He's got it all
Yeah.
going. Be Shafe, thanks. Comment, like, subscribe, share the videos, share the channel. Happy baseball season, everybody. Drop your comments. What do you think? Win total? Disagree with us? Agree with us? Drop your win totals right there in the replies. Sign Trevor Bauer and all that. Okay. See you guys.